What an interesting day, and definitely want to address this story because it's happening today, and it's happening here in the state of Virginia, and it is super prison news. Folks, today, Wednesday, March the 24th, 2021, our Governor Ralph Northam is going to abolish the death penalty here in this state, and that is huge, huge news. As I begin this, there's a lot that we're going to talk about in relation to this particular topic. This is going to be a really interesting video. It's also not going to be super long. But as I begin this, I want to start with a question posed to all of you, and please comment down below what your thoughts on this situation are. It's a question that's been asked to me many times over the years. I'm going to answer it myself. But what are your views on the death penalty? Do you agree with it, or do you not agree with it? Do you feel like it should be, or do you feel like we should not have a death penalty? And no matter what your answer is, why? Me personally, I agree with the death penalty in certain cases. You know, there are certain people who have committed heinous, horrible crimes, taking not just life, but taking multiple lives, that I don't see any other justice fit for them. Keeping them locked up for the rest of their natural life, where the taxpayers are gonna foot that bill, and you're gonna be a burden to, society, at least in the form of tax dollars to a certain degree. I do agree with the death penalty in that particular case. However, I know that there are people who are on death row who don't deserve to be there. There are innocent people who are on death row. There are people who have been put to death who were innocent. So I guess I'm a little conflicted. In one hand, I do agree with it, and in another, I am a little uncertain, I guess is the best way to put it. So here's the deal. Let me hit you with a couple of fun facts as we begin this video. Virginia has been executing people since 1806. I'm pretty sure I got that number correct without even consulting my notes. I will in just a moment. The very first person to get executed in this state was a captain, George, I believe it was it George Kendall? Captain George Kendall, 1608. And this guy was put to death for spying. Back in the day, laws were certainly different. I'm not sure if nowadays spying or treason constitutes the death penalty. I know a piracy charge, because I was locked up with some Somalian pirates, and this is how I learned this, carries a life sentence, which is pretty crazy. But the first person executed in this state was this Captain George Kendall for spying. Virginia has also executed one of the youngest people ever. And again, this is where that whole conflicted thing comes into play. And this happened back in 1916, where a 16-year-old by the name of Percy Ellis was executed. Now, Percy Ellis was executed in Virginia State Penitentiary, which I also believe is referred to as the Wall, or was referred to as the Wall. A very heinous prison in Richmond, Virginia. I didn't even know that they had the death penalty being carried out at that particular prison. But again, this was back in 1916. And Percy Ellis was convicted of murder. Now, here's where I got a problem with things. When you think about way back in the day, how the judicial system was probably even way more flawed than it is today, I don't know, but I definitely wonder what kind of evidence they had against this young man. It just definitely makes you wonder. And also, real quick, I want to clarify something. I had said fun fact earlier. This is not fun. These are just facts that you probably didn't know. Now, Percy Ellis, at 16 years old, would not be the youngest person ever executed. Virginia does not hold that record, and in fact, it's South Carolina that does, where a 14-year-old by the name of George Junius Stinney Jr. was executed for murder. And there's also stories about this particular young person, this kid, that say he could have potentially been innocent. And in fact, there's actually a Wikipedia's about this George Stinney Jr., who was executed in 1944, again, way back in the day. Says that he was convicted in a proceeding later vacated as an unfair trial in 2014. I don't make no jokes when I say this, but that's just a wee bit too late. Originally, this kid was convicted of murdering two white girls, one of the girls being 11 years old, the other one being 7 years old. He was executed by electric chair in June of 1944. Stinney is the youngest American to be sentenced to death and executed since Hannah Abolishes in 1786. I wonder how old she was. I probably don't want to know. Unfortunately, Virginia also holds some records in relation to the death penalty and executions, being the state that has carried out the most executions ever. Of course, Virginia would hold that record. Now, in modern times, which I guess is from maybe the 70s on up, Virginia is number 2. And what state do you think is number 1 in that department nowadays? Texas, you say? You're absolutely right. Crazy to think about, but Texas is number 1, Virginia is number 2. Since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated here in Virginia, there was a moratorium or a hiatus when the death penalty was not in effect here. But since 1976, when it was reinstated up to 2021. I got a couple of conflicting numbers here, but it's somewhere between about 110 to 114 people have been executed. Did all of those people deserve to be executed? I hate to even pose this question, but how many of them didn't deserve it? Could have potentially been innocent at that. Well, we don't know. None of us can answer that question, but I will hit you with another crazy fact that's going to make you think, and that is since the 1970s, 155 people have been released from death row because of evidence proving their innocence. Now, I'm not sure if they mean just in Virginia. I gotta think that that probably is like a nationwide number, but if that is only for this particular state, damn, we got some major issues with this judicial system and sentencing people to death. Virginia has also executed the most women of any state. Like, the average time between conviction and execution is 8 years here in Virginia, which is the shortest amount of time for that statistic of any state. Go figure. And real quick, one final thing to mention in relation to how overall, since 1608, when the first execution was carried out in this state, how Virginia has executed more people than any other state. That number sits at a whopping 1,300. And I share these statistics with you guys, facts, statistics. I share these with you because these are eye-opening. These are like, wow, what in the F is going on here? I had no idea about these, and I'm quite certain that a lot of you didn't know these numbers neither. Well, moving on to what is taking place today. Again, our governor, Ralph Northam, a Democrat. I hate to get political, but I'm going to kind of have to with where I'm going with all of this. Today, Governor Ralph Northam is abolishing the death penalty. Now, when I looked into why, I didn't really find a lot of information. I've got some hypotheticals that I'd like to pose and a little bit of information, starting with the fact that during the last election, Virginia won, more Democratic seats in politics. I don't know a lot of what I'm talking about with that, but that's what I read. And this was something that the Democrats definitely wanted to do. They wanted to get rid of the death penalty. Now, mentioning that, I also have to throw this thought in there as well. It is an election year for the governor. And I just got to believe that this, abolishing the death penalty definitely ties into that, the election year that it currently is. Not only is this governor abolishing the death penalty, he did a press conference recently about the restoration of rights for returning citizens and people coming home from prison. That's what they call convicts, people coming home. They don't call them convicts no more. You can't use that C word no more. It's not good. It's not good. Not in 2021. You got to call people returning citizens. But Governor Ralph Northam had done this press conference saying that he was going to make it a lot easier for people to regain the right to vote. And I don't know really how far he went into the restoration of rights, but he definitely said your ass can vote when you come home from prison. Hey, did I tell y'all it's an election year for your old Governor Ralph Northam? You make sure you vote, and you know who to vote for. I don't even know who he's running against. Now, I said that, I don't really like to get political, and that's about as political as I want to get with this. But I do want to say one thing about this particular governor. I ain't got too much bad that I got nothing bad that I can say about this man. He's abolished the death penalty. He's made it easier for returning citizens to vote. And this man done gave Joe Guerrero his rights restored. And I'm about to go after them gun rights, which I'm hearing they're getting ready to make that a lot harder. Thoughts and prayers to all the victims of this latest situation in Colorado. Unbelievably horrible. But I do want to get my gun rights restored because you got a lot of crazies out there in this world. And I know a lot of people who have gotten their gun rights restored, and it's a really easy thing to do. I'm going to chronicle my efforts to do this. My homeboy Connor is actually in the process of trying to get his restored. He's going to get his restored, and he was sharing with me the process of what he's going through in an effort to get his gun rights restored. And they ask you for some wild stuff. And I'll just go ahead and share with you what I mean by that. They ask you for you to provide all of your social media accounts, which I gotta believe is a new thing. Like, hey, what's your presence on Facebook, Instagram, that type of stuff. And I got no problem providing that type of information. AfterPrisonShow almost everywhere, or Joe P. Guerrero elsewhere. But then they ask for your passwords. And that ain't nothing I'm about to give up. I'm not giving you my password. That is way too invasive, whether you do social media for a living or not. I just think that that's kind of crazy. So I am going to try to rebuttal against that particular thing if and when I come upon that. But neither here nor there. This particular governor, he's done a lot in relation to criminal justice reform. Whether or not it's in relation to the election year or not, who cares? Hey, these things are getting done, and that's a good thing. Now, one other thing that I want to mention about all of this, not only is this governor getting rid of the death penalty today, he's actually touring Greensville Correctional Center, Prison, Greensville Correctional Institute. It's weird because they call every place something different, a facility, an institution, a complex. So I don't know what Greensville is. I know it's a level 3-4, or maybe it's just a level 3, I can't remember. But Greensville is the only prison here in this state currently that carries out the death penalty. Which is interesting because you've got other prisons that house death row prisoners, Sussex, Mecklenburg when that existed, and I do believe that Mecklenburg way back in the day, prior to Joe ever going there for receiving, I went to that prison twice. When I went there, it was a level 1 through 5, but back in the 90s, this prison was hell on wheels. I mean, this thing was a treacherous place to go. Banky has shared stories about this place back in the early 90s, and definitely not a place that you want to be. They've had some very notorious escapes that took place from this prison, but they also used to have the death penalty there, and I'm pretty sure they actually used to carry it out there. Regardless, just a little fodder, boss boomer word right there I wanted to use, fodder, that I wanted to share with you guys. But the more important thing is, this governor making a grand stand and spectacle of what he's doing today, and no disrespect to him at all because he's doing a big thing. Again, the death penalty here in this state has been in effect since 1976. Why does this particular governor want to abolish this? Questions that I can't answer. Is it for a religious belief or a political belief or an election year, whatever the case? He's at this prison today to make this announcement from where this state carries out the death penalty. And the reason I keep honing in on this is because I can remember many a times being in prison myself, or even a jail, when somebody of influence and power comes for a visit, a head honcho DOC person or official. I've never been nowhere where the governor was showing up, but I can remember even just having a high-ranking DOC dude showing up at a prison. Yo, don't think what they're feeding you today is for real. There's going to be a lot of faking taking place at that particular prison. Them trays is going to look delicious and boss. And all them prisoners are going to probably be on lockdown as well. They ain't going to give you not a red cent of a second to get an opportunity to say anything to the governor about what's going on up in there. Hey, yo, governor, can I get a second? Can I bend your ear for just 1 minute? Why y'all tear gassing me? Pretty interesting. Pretty historic as well. And I'm honored to get the opportunity to see this, to share this with you guys, and to also hear what any of you think or have to say about this particular thing. Do you think it's a good thing that Virginia is now one of 23 other states that has since abolished the death penalty? Like I said, in one hand, I agree with the death penalty. There are people who deserve that type of punishment. But those sort of people are far and few between. I can't even imagine the cost that is associated or is said to be associated. We all know how that goes. Oh yeah, we're gonna need $40 million for this extra security over here. I'm taking a trip to Jamaica. You know, it probably costs more to incarcerate death row. Whatever the case, definitely history being made in my particular state today. And I'm honored to get the opportunity to share this information with all of you. Hey, look, that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about this. And as always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace!